Can you see trees from your window? Do you enjoy being outside? Hi, I'm Tina, and like many people, I really enjoy being outdoors, especially at this time of the year. I really enjoy seeing the beautiful colors of the autumn leaves. So I was very excited to discover a number of studies that have looked at the relationship between the happiness of people living in cities and the parks and green spaces in these cities. These types of studies can be very useful for urban planning, especially because over half of the world's population now live in cities. So I'd like to share with you the findings of a review paper that compared the results from 57 studies covering 21 countries, and over half of these studies were conducted in Asia. So in most of the 57 studies, respondents were asked to answer questions about their quality of life, well-being, and satisfaction in life, and relate them to green space availability and other characteristics. I was not surprised to read that many studies found that people were generally happier when they live closer to green spaces, when they can go more easily and more frequently, and when these spaces are bigger. So for example, in both China and Mexico, people who could visit a green space at least once a week reported higher levels of satisfaction in life. So we can objectively measure the size of a green space, how close people live from it, and how often people visit. And some studies went beyond these objective measures and looked at subjective experiences. For example, they asked respondents, how safe do you feel being in this space? How attached are you to this space? The studies reported that, for example, the more someone is attached to a place and more familiar with the place, the more this space can contribute to their happiness. Especially, this is the case for older adults. But then objective and subjective data don't always match. And this is illustrated in a study that was conducted in Kobe and 3 other cities in Japan. Now, researchers asked residents in these cities to estimate the amount of green space that is close to their homes. They found that respondents tended to perceive green spaces around shrines to be more spacious and larger than those in schools or parks, even if all these spaces are objectively of the same size. Now, the review authors explained that one of the explanations is that in the green spaces around shrines, there are often tall old trees and native plants, and sometimes even rare species. And tree density and biodiversity affect people's subjective perceptions of green spaces. And they found that this was supported by studies from other countries, such as Singapore and Korea, where respondents reported they were happier in green spaces where they could see more varieties of trees, animals, or birds. But then the relationships between urban green spaces and happiness also vary with income, subjective perception of safety, age, and other factors. For example, 2 studies in China reported that urban green spaces only contribute to people's levels of happiness if their income is above a certain level. Now, even more complicated is how do we measure happiness? The review study found that it was difficult to draw firm conclusions from the 57 studies because they all used different measures to quantify happiness. In most studies, researchers asked respondents to assess their subjective level of well-being and quality of life. In other studies, researchers took the photos that people have posted on social media, took the facial expressions from these photos, characterized them as happy, sad, or other index, and then correlated this index with the urban green space that corresponds to the location where the photo was taken. According to these researchers, facial expressions are a more accurate representation of level of happiness. But according to other researchers, different people have different abilities and different ways to express their emotions. According to you, how important are green spaces to happiness? How would you define happiness? I'd be curious to hear how these findings resonate with you.